My first job, I think I got paid $4.50 an hour, so I was significantly ahead of you.
No, it was different times.
I know it was
I
in
was
like
making a
probably
lot more than
2000.
450 when you were making 450.
I was about the same age though. I think I was 10 or 11, but I worked at a local golf course. I just cleaning is all I did. Clean the little pro shop and the golf carts. I'd have to clean the golf carts too. That's it though. Um,
I remember
but
when I was machining back in the 80s and even up in the 90s, and thinking, man, $20 an hour was the highest wages in the world. I remember Harley was paying 27.50
yeah,
for a machine operator job, and I was trying to get that job, and that was I think that was in '89, and I was thinking, man, how much money that would be, and
yeah,
I didn't get the job, and now I would have never dreamed that nowadays machinists are making $40 an hour. It's
yeah.
crazy,
That is crazy.
and you can't even get anybody to come in and work for that price. You know,
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I know. Uh, my grandma told me that her and grandpa never made in their whole lives. Of course, they retired in the '90s. Way long time ago. But her and grandpa combined never made over like $11 an hour or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think she like remembers when grandpa got over at like $10 an hour, and she was like, "Wow, that's
We made
great."
it. We made it.
Yeah. Oh, but they did like, they, I, they didn't spend money back then like people do now either. It's like my grandma, she's 93 and she's still living off of it, and according to her, she's going to be fine until she dies. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I
it goes
remember
to
when I was
show.
a kid, my mom going grocery shopping and spending $40 or $50 and having two grocery carts completely full of groceries, and
Yeah.
saying, "Isn't it outrageous how much these groceries are costing?"
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
you can't even make a quick trip to a grocery store
put
right now
two
for.
hamburgers in the grocery cart and a box of monsters, and it's $40.
Yeah, I know. I know. I bought what did I buy the other day? A bag of almonds. Trying to, we always try to eat healthy, and that's like a healthy snack. But it was like $11 for a freaking bag of almonds. I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh, crazy. But also like back then, I mean, they didn't have internet bill, they didn't have cell phone bills. They didn't have, a lot of times you just had one vehicle, and that was you paid new $5,000 for it or less. So it's definitely different. But um,
I remember
I
how
don't know if it.
crappy cars were back in those days too. You'd
Oh,
break
really?
down all the time. Yeah, and road trips were always an adventure. You'd blow tires all the time and stuff. Stuff was not as good built as it is now,
Yeah,
as far as cars go. And
yeah,
I think a lot of people probably don't realize that, but I remember that. You go down the street and blow tires all the time, and it's crazy.
yeah,
But then
yeah,
again, I mean, everybody had so little money that you'd go down to the junkyard to buy your tires. You go down to the junkyard to get a new set of tires, new used
yeah.
tires.
Well, people were just more thrifty back then too. Like that's something you would do, just because why not? It saves you a little money, and uh, I mean, I remember my grandpa like cracking walnuts in the barn and going and selling them just because like that was like extra money, and I mean, just I don't know things people don't do anymore
Right?
for money.
Black
Um,
walnuts.
yeah,
Yeah, we did that when I
yeah,
was a kid. You never see anybody take them anymore. You just see them lay there.
mm-hmm,
And black walnuts are awesome. If nobody's ever tried those, oh, you should
mm-hmm,
try them. We used to pick them, and we try to dry them without squirrels getting them. And squirrels would always find a way to get them. Even if you put them in the house, they'd smell them and chew through your walls. But
yeah,
we used to always have cars laying around the yard. My dad would put them in the trunk, and eventually the squirrels would chew through the metal to get at them. But
yeah,
we dry them because otherwise you get all full of that oil.
yeah,
Then my dad would every day after work he'd spend about an hour cracking them with a hammer,
mm-hmm,
and then after he had like a bushel basket of them cracked with a hammer, because they're not like regular nuts, you can't crack them with a nut cracker. They're
right,
so heavy, of course.
yeah,
And then after he had them cracked with a hammer, then he would finish cracking them with a nut cracker, and then he would take one of them poker things and poke all the nuts out, and it would take him like a month to fill a mason jar
yeah,
of black walnuts, and they were so strong next to regular walnut that eating them raw was really hard because the they're overwhelming, like a vanilla flavor, like really strong. But if
Yeah.
you cook them into nuts and stuff, they're way better than any nut. If you cooked them into a bread, or those wild nuts were awesome. You had those, huh?
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
never talked to too many people that lived like we used to live. I mean, we lived off the land. We ate a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, my grandparents, like every night it was either deer meat or like crappie and bluegill, or whatever. I mean, that's about it. My grandpa pretty well kept the freezers full of that stuff when I was little. Like I never remember him ever, uh, them ever like having beef or anything. Now my grandma, now she prefers beef. That's what she eats now. But I think just because she's kind of over. She's over the hard work of it. She's 92 or 3 now. So, but yeah, my grandpa, I remember he would, he'd take me fishing in the summertime when school was out. And I remember getting up at like 4 a.m. to go fishing with him. And he would even, when he would cook breakfast, like he would fry us eggs, in the morning, and he'd put deer meat in them. Like he just mixed deer meat in there. Like he always had to have some kind of meat in them or something. It's just like, it was real funny. And then something else, and I guess this is kind of contradicting, but he always had that, like, I'm going to try to pronounce it. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's like Braunschweiger or some kind of sausage. You remember that stuff? I think it's called like Braunschweiger. And it was like this really soft, mushy sausage. Anyways, I just remember him always having that too. And he'd bring it fishing with us. And then he'd sit there and get that out of the cooler and cut a piece off for me with his fish hands and his pocket knife that's been who knows where, and we'd eat that for, it's like liver sausage. That's right, Joe. It's a couple people.
My mom would always go to the store and she'd buy chicken gizzards and and goofy parts like that. And when we would go fishing, she'd want you to tie some to like a heavy string, like not like fishing string, like a heavy string.
Yeah.
And throw it out near the shore and catch crayfish for boil afterwards. Well, you catch, how many crayfish you're going to catch? You catch 5 of them, So we kept trying to catch crayfish. We'd store them until we had enough for a boil, but you wouldn't get very many. And then one day, my mom says, I'm going to teach you how to catch crayfish. I'm like, okay. I was a little kid. I was probably like 6 or 8 or something. I mean, pretty little.
Yeah.
And she went in the garage and she got out an old screen. You know how back in the day you used to keep things like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You'd store everything. Everything would be reused because you didn't have a lot of money. So she got this screen out, window screen. And they had wooden frames in those days, not like nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So she cut off the bottom window. So it was just one panel with a screen in it.
Mm-hmm.
And nailed a board over the top of it, like a 2x4. So it's like a net. And she says, now you go in the river, take that, scrape it along the bottom and go under the bushes and pull it up and it'll be full of crayfish. You work your way down the stream. So I took that thing down to the river and man, did I catch the crap in that thing. Not just crayfish, fish and
really
little bass, little turtles. One time I got a muskrat in it. I didn't catch it, but it dove out. But it was like, you never knew what was going to come up in that net if you went up under the bushes. But I would fill buckets full of crayfish and we'd have these boils. And I remember those crayfish boils. And even when my kids were growing up, I took Jamie one day and I said, I'm going to teach you how to catch crayfish. And I went and found one of them screen nets and showed him that. And he said, you're a stupid old man. Who would do that? Different times.
Yeah. I remember too. My grandpa he lived in this same exact house that I'm sitting in right now. And across the cornfield, his friend George lived in a little shack, and I'm not even sure if it's there anymore, but it was like the shack was the size of this room, and it had a lean-to off the front of it. He was just a single old man. I'm not really sure if he ever got married or anything, but him and my grandpa were like best friends, and he just lived like in the back of the property, like on the he was the neighbor or whatever. He had a trail, a 4-wheeler trail through my grandpa's land up to my grandpa's house. And he would go with us fishing, and he only had one leg. And he was like a chain smoker, like he smoked one after the other. And he ended up having diabetes or whatever, something. That's how he lost his leg. But they told me when I was little that a catfish bit it off when they were fishing one day. And so for the longest time when I was little, we'd catch every now and again bluegill fishing, or crappie fishing. You'd catch a catfish, or we'd check a trout line when we were out there. They'd have a big catfish, and that thing would be, my grandpa just had like a 12-foot John boat, and that thing would be laying in the bottom of the boat, and I would just be sitting there just staring at it like I'd want to be on the other side of the boat because they freaking told me that it bit George's leg off. But that guy George, I don't remember a lot about him, but he always would catch like off game things fishing. Like he caught a snake one time, I remember, and he caught a duck one time, and my grandpa would always get real frustrated with him about that. I remember. I also remember him falling asleep every time, like driving back from the lake. He'd fall asleep with a cigarette in his mouth, and he'd wake up when it burned him and stuff. But yeah, that's different days back then. I miss him though. That was like fond memories of doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we could tell stories about the old times all day.
Yeah, that'd be a good show actually. When I was little, my cousins, I mean real little, my cousins are all older than me. I'm like one of the youngest grandkids, and they all had their license, and I'd be like 5 or 6, real little, and they would take me out spotlighting with them whenever they'd go spotlighting at night. And you know what heat lightning is, right? Whenever like the flashes in the sky when it's summertime out. They told me those were UFOs coming down to Earth whenever I saw that. So again, I'd be terrified like when that stuff would start happening at night with them, and they'd be like, "Oh, here they come! The aliens are coming!" And that was the time when like Men in Black was real big and all those alien movies were coming out. Oh man, they were mean to me. But anyway, that's another memory I have when I was little about getting scared to death by my family.
Hey everybody, if you like the channel, make sure you subscribe right here. And if you like the clips, I got 2 more options for you. 2 options right here. Subscribe right here. See you guys.